let's talk about The Bride.
A lonely Frankenstein travels to 1930 Chicago to ask groundbreaking scientist Dr. Euphronious to create a companion for him. The two revive a murdered young woman, and the bride is born. And what ensues is beyond what either of them imagined. That's Maggie Gyllenhaal's The Bride, which has been much discussed even ahead of its release. It initially was set to come out at the back end of 2025, and then was pushed for reasons of maybe potentially hurting Jessie Buckley's Oscar campaign for that Best Actress award. Now, we don't know by the time of this recording yet, because the Oscars haven't happened, if she'll actually get it. It's highly likely that she will. Maybe we could also discuss the universe later on, if this movie had come out last year, if it actually would have hurt her chances. But The Bride, you've sort of been talking about that as like with the trailers, that it gave off that Joker vibe. We got a lot of overlapping talent with the cinematographer, with the composer, and Warner Brothers as a whole behind it. That a lot of the story beats remind you of that film as well. Then maybe it lacks its sort of own identity. With the movie I got a lot of thoughts on this. I think you. I
know, but I wanna start it off with a question. Yeah. You forgot something. It's not called The Bride. It's called The Bride! ! And my question to you, Ewan, was Lawrence Hart right all along? That if
I was thinking
a movie
that as well.
has an exclamation point, you better steer clear from it.
Mm-hmm.
Was he right with this movie?
I legit was thinking about Lawrence Hart, like from Blue Moon, while I was watching this movie as well. I was like, yeah, it's definitely, this whole movie feels like it has to make an exclamation point around a lot of its points again and again. I think he was right, to give you a short answer. Yeah, definitely.
So your answer is yes to that question. My answer would also unfortunately be yes by that question. I think The Bride, I was bored most of the time, which, for a concept of this movie, being bored is the last thing you think you'd be, but unfortunately I was, and it was only until like half an hour, like 35 minutes into the actual movie, that I got a bit hooked to the story, which for half an hour is a bit insane, especially in, these modern times where people have an attention span of 2 minutes. And yeah, I was just surprised. Even the resurrection of the bride, which, is always the like peak point of these movies. It's very stylized. This one didn't feel stylized or like even, adrenaline fueling at all. And even the character of Frankenstein himself, that's been seemingly around for 100 years, is surprisingly stupid, even though when he meets Dr. what's her name, Euphronious, they're like actually talking about, like high research topics and like, oh yeah, I've read your research on, but so he's a smart person, but I guess, socially he's not the most developed, which
he's
feels
like
a bit weird. After
when they
100
shake
years.
hands, he says like, no, I think that part isn't weird, because it's sort of set up in this world that he
but
hasn't
it's also
touched
like
anyone.
you live 100 years, and whenever he's like conversing with Jessie Buckley, it is a bit weird, especially in their interaction, because she's intelligent as well, so you think they would connect a bit better to each other, but they often don't, which is, you can say the opposite thing on an acting level. I think Jessie Buckley and Christian Bale saved this movie a lot. They saved this movie.
If you go by your rating, they don't completely save it. They try to, they like a sinking ship, and they're just like very good at chucking the
at calming the
out.
people on the boat. Yeah.
They keep on playing the fiddle.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the cast, you got Jessie Buckley, Christian Bale, Jake Gyllenhaal, Annette Bening, Peter Sarsgaard, Penelope Cruz, John Magaro, Louis Cancel Me again in a role that is like could get him canceled in the role that he plays. It's perfect casting. And you just look at that cast and you're like, oh, there's some side plots to this movie where it really is unfocused in its identity. Like, is it more of a like more feminist driven emancipation mystery, like fantasy tale, or is it more grounded in like some sort of noir aesthetic with a mob? I think the whole mob plot that like runs through the whole movie really muddies the core message of the film because it's so like taken to something clearly wrong instead of criticizing a larger structure that is like very patriotic and a reason to rebel against. It gives you something that is like, yeah, no, there's some literal criminal shit, murder happening. Obviously that's wrong and no one's saying anything, and it's not just because they're women, it's just wrong. And I think it just like gets really muddled from the first minute on, when this whole narrational story device of how it's presented is through Mary Shelley, who's sort of connecting through her to her creature, to Frankenstein, of like reawakening this, and it cuts back and forth of her around the table, which even in that scene, I think for a solid minute or two, I didn't know that she was like a lady of the night and she was like trying to infiltrate. I thought she was just like someone's girlfriend there. And then her acting out was like, I don't know, maybe I just like wasn't paying enough attention, but to me that wasn't immediately clear. So like it became pretty apparent, I guess, later on, but it just was off in that presentation because it makes Jessie Buckley go from like an American accent to one of like this old English thing, and it's just very messy for no apparent reason. And I did watch the 1931 and 1935 Frankenstein, the Bride of Frankenstein movie, plus a bunch of the later ones as well, because it is sort of a take of that retelling of that story that starts off with Mary Shelley and I believe a brother or someone like that, like talking about like having written this book and these creatures, and then going back to, I guess, the Frankenstein Universal monster movies from the 30s. And in that movie, the bride is in the last like 5 minutes. Like, I guess spoilers for that movie, which is almost 100 years old now. They bring her back to life. She doesn't like him. He's like, oh, she doesn't like me. Let's blow everything up. He blows them all up. He kills the bride. He kills another scientist, and he kills himself. But joke's on you, he's back for the next one. He actually didn't die. But it sort of ends the story in a way where like Elizabeth and Dr. Frankenstein make it out, but the rest is like killed. And this movie very early on obviously like goes with, oh no, she's actually along for the ride, but she's sort of seeking, I don't know what she's looking for, because she's clearly being lied to by him. And we are very much narrowly walking that line where it's conveniently she doesn't uncover things. And then it just sort of drags in this Bonnie and Clyde type of like, let's go, like we commit a crime, we are on the run. Of course, there's a mob. There's always a mob in a Frankenstein movie, especially in these 30 ones, man. Literally, at least one mob a movie. It's crazy. It's actually like, to form a mob like that is quite impressive.
Yeah.
But sorry, I've been talking for a while, but there's just a lot to talk about. It's just a lot of things that are happening that I think aren't working well within each other. I like how she tries to be very daring with this movie, but I think it's just kind of overall like it's like, you got an inflatable thing, right? And it has all of these different things that it can flap open to, and then it's like, oh, it's a crazy thing that's like, oh, so big. But because you are like pushing air into this section and into this section and into this section, at the end the whole thing doesn't have air in it. It just stays flat,
And it's quite interesting because you have the source material in your mind. You are very close to the book. You are very close to the original movies. I am not.
This is sort of not something that happens in the book. All the bride stuff.
Oh, I know, right? But like you are close to like the source material is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, okay.
And I am more the guy that looked at the first trailer and was like, why is this giving me major Joker vibes? And I want to dive in a bit more into that from my point of view. So we've said it has the same cinematographer in Lawrence Sher. It has the same composer in Hildur Gudnadottir. And we have an overlap in the producer in Emma Tillinger Koskov. Also, again, from Joker 2 and Joker 2 Folie à Deux, and even the first Joker, and in comparison to The Bride. The Bride also clearly wants to sort of reinvent and reimagine the original like event of Frankenstein, and Joker Folie à Deux tries to do that as well with Joker. Todd Phillips basically saying like, "Hey, f you to the people that are like inspired by the first Joker movie." So they both have that same original goal in mind, and then like I guess a bit of a spoiler territory from here on because I'm comparing like literal story beats and scenes. You have the moment that Frankenstein kills the people that are harassing the bride, like Jesse Buckley, and him felt like the same moment to me when the Joker is being harassed by those three guys in the subway. Very familiar moments, and the moment that Frankenstein kills in the bride was actually the moment that was a bit hooked, because then the sort of Bonnie and Clyde dynamic starts to happen. We have both fanatics that are being inspired in the bride and in the Joker, and it's quite funny because in the Joker, it's very clearly these like meta dudes that are like, "Yeah, we are men," and in the bride, it's like, "Yeah, we are females, female empowerment." So it's like a bit of a reflection of each other. We have two detectives that are on the case. In the bride, it is Sarsgaard and Penelope Cruz, and in Joker, it's like Shea Wiggum and Bill Camp, and they have like the same dynamic and involvement in the story, even though the bride tries to very much be like, "Hey, Penelope Cruz is this female detective," but she's actually saying she's an assistant. But they, in terms of like impact in the movie, it feels exactly the same, even though Shea Wiggum and Bill Camp in Joker have like even less involvement with it. We have also a character, the main protagonist reveres in the bride, that is Jake Gyllenhaal character, where Frankenstein is very inspired by him as they watch him a lot on the screen, and when they first meet him in the like lobby room or like a premiere, I guess it was.
Yeah.
And in Joker, it's obviously De Niro, and like both our main protagonists meet their heroes, and it actually doesn't end up as they would have liked. They're being sort of laughed at. And then we obviously have the musical and the dance numbers that come up like sort of out of nowhere. And we have that in The Bride and Joker Folie à Deux. So I think there is enough overlap in these story beats to say, yes, they are quite familiar, they are quite similar. And now there's this sort of discourse that like, you know, people are clowning on Joker and defending Bride by saying, "Oh, but Maggie Gyllenhaal took a risk as a justification for it being a mess for me." And I was also wondering at the same time, because I haven't heard anything from Todd Phillips with after Joker Folie à Deux, and like again, Joker Folie à Deux was a bold move. You got like $200 million from Warner Brothers, and you basically retcon your entire first movie. And it was a move that I really admired. But with Maggie Gyllenhaal, it's like you made The Lost Daughter, which is a movie that came out in 2020, I believe, or like 2021. I liked your small story thing, and I really like her as a writer as well. I know she was in The Kindergarten Teacher, which was a movie I really liked, and it's just like I felt like she needed a movie in between The Lost Daughter and The Bride to pull off The Bride. I felt like she was thrown into this big movie filmmaking a bit too early, and I think that is ultimately what cost The Bride its like efficiency.
I think it's something about, like, if you remember The Lost Daughter, which is like about a really complicated like female lead character too, that is holding very like a lot of contradictions within itself. And here it's just on a larger scale, like sort of communicated or try to communicate through these three different characters of the Bride, of Ida, and of Mary Shelley, that sort of conglomerate into the same thing, but it's the different spectrums of this woman that feel like could be reflected in maybe one person to make it less messy, because you don't 100% know, like, sort of what's influencing what, like what part of Mary Shelley is like talking to Ida already, is in the anticipation that she'll be reanimated, is that sort of connection to that character that she's talking to, or is it more about like Mary Shelley as this representation of like, you know, someone who is really sort of a grandmother to the genre of writing as well, and the often retconning of like not giving women actually that place that they deserve in science, but also in science fiction. And I think like I can see all of the intention behind casting that whole spectrum on the big screen. It just, yeah, I'd say I call it audacious, but it doesn't know what to cohesively do with all of its ideas. And it's really disappointing because I think there's an interesting thing in here. And I told you that I think that sort of the big voice that comes in that like, you know, gives you the narrative framework, and then scenes play out, and they play out in a way that I think you could do this more successfully if it was on stage. I think this reads more like a stage play to me. Like really, I'm replaying the movie, and I did it a couple of times, and it just kind of makes sense to me that a lot of these things that, like, maybe it's also me shitting on theater a bit, where it feels like things have to be less thought out on a plot level, and they can't just be thematically like, you know, focused, or a bit more focused, or even not focused and come off as focused, because you fill in way more of the in between. Because I think with theater, like, there's way more of that sort of, you need to buy in way more. And I just, from the first moment when Mary Shelley's on screen, and in a really cringy way of addressing it, like in a very didactic way of telling at you what you're supposed to be feeling, like literally making characters say "me too" a bunch of times in a way that's like obviously activating that phrase in the audience, but doesn't like no context that is relevant to the story itself. It's shouting a bunch of words, not really knowing what to ultimately say. It really is a lot of noise. I was frustrated. Yeah. I really wanted this to be better, but
I thought you were about to shit on theater. I was like, no, don't go the Timothée Chalamet way of insulting ballet and opera.
Don't
and
get me started on those stupid like Oscar drama stuff. I couldn't care less. I also could care less. You know, this is the thing that you say both.
But things. I told you the solution to that Mary Shelley black and white type of narration would have been to cast someone else. In my mind, it would have been Catherine Hunter. I was imagining Catherine Hunter in that role. In sort of the same way that she's in Tragedy of Macbeth. I absolutely love her in that role. I was imagining
doesn't work because Mary Shelley didn't get very old, so it's like it doesn't. It needs to be younger.
Yeah, so I was just imagining someone else as the narrator to make it a bit.
You didn't say, you said Catherine Hunter, right? Not Catherine Hahn.
No, Catherine Hunter.
Catherine Hunter. No, way too old. But Catherine Hahn would, for me, maybe, just stay on the Cathy.
Maybe
for Catherine.
Fair.
Tie to Frankenstein too. Did you wait? I saw this randomly today. Did you know that Heath Ledger was named after Heathcliff from Wuthering Heights, and his sister as well, Catherine, after Catherine in that novel. Didn't know that.
We are still talking about Wuthering Heights in March. I'm kidding. I felt like that was it. That was a bit too savage. I'm sorry.
But did you see the list that Maggie shared to Letterboxd?
I did
about
not.
Like the films
quickly. Also to hammer a bit, the point home, which is exactly what this movie does. There's a certain line that they say to the movie, "I'd prefer not to," which, is quite a powerful line if you think about it.
Yeah.
But the problem is they say it a dozen times throughout this movie. Like, they say it way too many times, where it's like, okay, we get it now. We are not this dumb.
Kevin.
And
I could do this all day.
Oh my God.
It's that sort of writing, right?
And it's so weird because Maggie Gyllenhaal also talked about this being her first experience with test screenings. And it's like, bro, what was this movie like before the test screenings and everything? Like, it's truly a fascinating movie in terms of how they still got released, because it's also Warner Brothers. And if they were not this confident in this movie, this is still Zaslav's Warner Brothers. Would this movie have been justified to have been shelved? I don't know,
do you
man.
see the 80 or 85 million that it cost in production budget on screen? Because I think I see that. I think it like.
Oh,
lavish
Yeah.
sets, like, set design. We did talk about this, not yet, I guess, in our review here, that you thought the cinematography, even though it was stunning in Joker, wasn't great in this to
No,
you.
the
I
camera
thought it
work was
fine.
abysmal.
I think
No,
the editing was to
there are
me
like a couple
the
of
part
scenes
that
whenever they go close-ups and there's like some intense shaking. It's like, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
It's the same, and it's the same cinematographer, and it's like, why are we doing this close, intense shake-up? And they do it multiple times through the movie, and especially in close-up or like medium close-up. And I just hated it. I found it so disorienting and distracting. And don't come at me with saying that's the point, because I don't think it is at all. Yeah.
It's also, the mob boss that is played by the one guy who.
Oh yeah,
James Cameron, forget his name, but I think
it was
that
also
scene as
in
well.
Superman, right?
I think when that scene is supposed to show that like he's ruthless, the tension isn't really there. Like it's a lot about not shooting individual scenes well, where you can sort of see, you can feel the sort of mold that it's trying to take scenes from, but it sort of lacks a bit of its own identity, even just in the presentation of the bride itself, with that very over the top like black like lipstick or paint thing over her.
Yeah.
It feels a bit too broad. It's just a tiny bit too much, and it feels like that also represents how much of this movie feels. It sort of overdoes all of its scenes quite a bit.
By the way, the guy is called Zlatko Brić.
Yeah.
The one that plays Lupino and the bad guy, who's also the bad guy in Superman, also the bad guy in Wolves, and probably like is most famous, I would say, for Triangle of Sadness.
What do you think about Jake's character and like his obsession with the cinema?
No. And again, it's this sort of like, hey, celebrating old school cinema, and it's like it just doesn't. It's not doing anything for me. I get it's her brother, but it did nothing for me. And
Yeah,
with De Niro, you at least have that confrontation in Joker. Here it's like, oh yeah, hey, yeah, thank you. What a weird guy. That's it.
There isn't really much that comes from it. Yeah, apart from I guess that dancing scene. It's just a lot of it. I think I laughed out loud when they started dancing. I was like, what the fuck is that? And then I also think Peter Sarsgaard is one of the people who, like, that character does not work at all when it comes to the bride. I think the stuff with him and Penelope Cruz is okay-ish, of him sort of being this ally that's stuck in the structures, that he feels like he's complacent in not making a move. And that move has cost someone else's life with Ida, that he wasn't doing more than he could have. Like, he was just like staying in line, and he does the same of like his repeated line. I think was quite a bit better than the like
I prefer not to.
I prefer not to. Of what does he say? Like, there's nothing he can do about that, or something like that. It's like not something that is like itched into my mind because he says it so much, but the sentiment is sort of felt, and I kind of like that. Like, by the end of it, of him, major spoilers, by the end of him like leaving all of this and handing it over to Penelope, like that sort of has come full circle. But I've also didn't really like how it went about that character as well, with the like lady cop. I think it was like too broad of like, oh, look at all these dumb men who want to ostracize a woman. And it's like, obviously, like that's sort of really was happening, is still happening in certain fields where there is that sexism around. But it just felt like it always needs to oversell you on someone's brilliance to justify that they deserve to be there, which makes sense because like everyone who wasn't trying as hard probably would have given up like way earlier. But it still feels like something feels really off about it. Underused characters here. Annette Bening. For a second, I didn't recognize that it was Annette Bening. It took me like a minute.
What?
I don't know. I just like, she was like, I saw that character. I was like, oh yeah, no, that is Annette Bening. I don't know. Maybe she's just like not. I don't have her as present in my mind. I was like, oh yeah, no, that is.
To be fair, she does always like usually have shorter hair, and now she has like this crazy like pop out wig, like an actual crazy professor and doctor. So maybe I get it from that point of view. But I mean, even John McGorrow, who had a stellar year last year with Omaha, Curlin 75, The Mastermind, The Materialist, and now it's like he's in this and it's like he's in fucking Visible. I love when John McGorrow like shows up on screen, but he was invisible in this movie. And funnily enough, his name in The Bride was Clyde. So
Yeah.
I guess, hey, Bonnie and Clyde, another reference.
Yeah, I mean, some of the references that we have here, like you can see where they're taken from. Like the opening is very Persona-like. Then we got Top Hat, Metropolis, Babyface, the original Frankenstein. Funnily enough, she didn't put the Bride of Frankenstein, which, by the way, the Bride of Frankenstein is way more like a comedy than the first one. It definitely was like, I wrote down in my notes when I was watching, is like, wait, is this a comedy? And I checked in the genres and it's not a comedy. It is clearly a comedy. It is very funny at times of like how, like, in this original Frankenstein, in the first one, he just kills a little kid, and all of the letterbox comments are like, I don't blame him. I don't blame Frank, like the monster, because like, why would he know that this, not my language, that this little bitch can't float? Okay. And in the second one, he just kills another kid off screen. So in that original thing, he is clearly just the monster, right? There's no humanity to him, and all of the scientists are like comically evil, like they're very one note. And I think that's sort of, maybe it's just the Guillermo del Toro one, or like what I see to see that, like, no, Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein is actually the monster. The creature is not the monster, it's the creature, right? Like, I think a lot of that is just like as recent as Guillermo del Toro's take on this story. But I guess it wasn't always. He really was just like that villain character, similar to like Dracula and like those things, which like literally overlap. Like the last one I watched out of all of these was called The House of Frankenstein, where there's just like a bunch of these, like Wolfman, Dracula, like they all are in the same.
Yeah, the team up. Yeah.
They're not really I don't know. All of these movies are like, they're kind of odd. There's like a character that's called Igor that sort of takes over. They're very messy.
I mean, aren't they like the monsters, Avengers of the 30s or 40s, whenever they were produced? Like, yeah, I mean,
there were so many of them, and I've seen a bunch of them. I haven't seen Dracula, but I've seen Wolfman, that original one when that movie came out last. Was that last year? It felt like 3 years ago, but I think that was last year. We've come a long way since then. Obviously, there were like adaptations of the story before in theater, and there's been so much about Frankenstein. It might be the most it's definitely up there. Maybe there's something else that has been adapted more, but it's probably one of the most adapted stories of all time.
The timing of this movie, we also we addressed it in the intro. I guess we can talk about it now. The Bride usually normally was supposed to come out 2025, but you have obviously Jesse Buckley's Hamlet. But you also got another Frankenstein in Del Toro's one. So those are two reasons, I guess, to delay the movie, besides the reason of not being very confident in it and not to hurt any of your other movies during that campaign, which is Warner Brothers. So, I mean, you would have put your money into One Battle After Another and Sinners anyway, which they are probably going to win. One of them is going to win Best Picture. Highly likely will still be One Battle After Another for me. But yeah, it shows why they delayed this. You could say for multiple reasons, but I think
as March has become more of like the dumping ground for some movies, or like February, March.
Yeah,
and it's like the first.
It used to be
March.
January, but January was good. So
yeah, because a lot of that bleed over of like getting wide releases for some potentially still Oscar relevant movies, or and a bunch of good like actual like kickoff starts for people who wanna not just like watch the Oscar stuff. There's usually something to counterbalance now, and really has sort of shifted. I obviously think that people will not most likely like really champion this film, but I think it's going to find its niche audience that actually kind of likes its messiness. But yeah, I can't really say that I honestly, like, I didn't completely hate it. I could have gone way lower on the rating. I ended up on like a 5 out of 10 because I think some of the crafts in this are still quite well done. Not the cinematography, not the editing, but more the actual performances that are, with the text that they're given, they're quite decent. Also, I think in my one-liner on Letterboxd, I said it's just a Jesse Buckley vocal stimming for like 2 hours. the thing where you just like are hung up on a word and sort of repeat it the way that she's like, because that's like her performance is quite impressive of the sort of rhyming things that the association and sort of, if you would track that character a bit more carefully of what she's, because she feels like she's someone who acts first, thinks later, or like is so willing to make that first step that you could represent it in the character just like talking constantly, then sort of having a like tracking point for where that character's at with the way that she speaks. If that was a bit more, thought through and concise, it actually could have been a bit better.
By the way, at some point I did thought Jessie Buckley's character had like Tourette's, the way she was rhyming and just like sort of twitching, etc.
Yeah.
And it's just because of recency with I Swear and all that. But I gave this movie a 4 out of 10. It's like you said, like the fact that this had the same cinematographer, the music didn't even do that much for me. It's edited by the same person that edited, Magnolia, There Will Be Blood, Phantom Thread, Boogie Nights, Unbreakable, The Town, The Assassination of Jesse James. It's like so many great movies this guy edited, and this movie just didn't feel like. And I truly think my hardest of hearts that Maggie Gyllenhaal just needed one step above The Lost Daughter and then get to The Bride. I honestly think once she had that experience with a bit more studio filmmaking, this movie would have been better. But unfortunately,
I think
it wasn't.
The way that we talk about the editing and the test screenings, that first experience, it definitely feels like there's a lot of like stuff that has been cut that makes this such a mess. I don't know if there is in any place a better movie that was shot. I don't think so. But it just comes to like, it just kind of shows that maybe that's partly why it's also so off for me in the editing, that there was something wrong about like the whole thing, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree.